Art Laffer joins us now, former Reagan economic advisor, Laffer and Associates founder and chairman, to reflect on former President Bush and in particular focus on his economic policy. And I know, Art, when anybody is watching and says, well, you have Art Laffer on and you're going to talk about those days, you're going to have to ask him about voodoo economics. And for those, you know, it's interesting because, and I think most people probably do know the story, but for those that don't, briefly, George H.W. Bush, when he was running against Ronald Reagan in 1980, had criticized his economic policy, cutting taxes and also spending more on the military and other things as being, quote, voodoo economics. But he was really, in reality, not only criticizing Ronald Reagan, Art, right? He was criticizing the architect of that policy, which would be, at least in part, well, you. So could you talk about that and how your relationship developed after that when he became vice president?
Sure. Well, let me say I knew George Bush, President Bush, fairly well. Not really well, but he and Mrs. Bush I knew well and saw a lot of them during the Reagan years. I mean, and they're just the finest people you'll ever meet. I mean, really decent, wonderful people, which is a rare commodity in the highest echelons of political life. Let me just tell you, there are not really nice people up there. There are some, and you can think of some like George Shultz and some others who are really wonderful. Ronald Reagan himself was wonderful, but the Bushes were just first class all the way. On the economic front, he wasn't quite the same. I mean, Ronald Reagan was an entrepreneur, an understander of incentives. George Bush really wasn't. In 1980, in the primaries, I think it was in Pennsylvania, he referred to voodoo economics, Reagan's tax cut plans as voodoo economics, and then he referred to me specifically and said, Art Laffer is the architect, some economist in California. Well, he'd known me before. And, you know, we won. He lost. He came in, and he was the best vice president ever. He served Reagan beautifully. You know, he just did a great, great job. In 1986, the president asked me to support George Bush, which I did, even though Jack Kemp was an usher in my wedding and Pete DuPont had done his tax reforms and all of that. I dropped all of that and went and supported him in the primary in 1988. I went up to New Hampshire at the president's request to campaign for George Bush and with the Manchester Union leader and all that stuff. We won, and it was great, but then we came to the convention. Now he did his next quote for me, which was specifically on me, as they will come back to me and ask me for higher taxes, and I will say, read my lips, no new taxes, which happened there. And, of course, he broke that promise shortly thereafter. The economy tanked. Revenues fell sharply after he raised tax rates, which is what you would expect. And the economy did not do well. Wealth of the United States grew very, very slowly. And he lost the election as a result of that action. You know, but he was great on foreign policy. I mean, I've got to say some really nice things. He is a manager, not an entrepreneur. George H.W. Bush was a manager, and all of the sort of entrepreneurial stuff of Reagan, like the defense budget, like the taxes, like that stuff, they weren't in his bailiwick. They just weren't part of his world. But managing the collapse of the Soviet Union, he did the best job of any president imaginable. He was just great on that.
And it's also kind of an interesting to hear you tell that wonderful story or set of stories, to see the idea that, you know, people don't have to agree on everything with economics, and then, you know, but you still have so much respect, and you can hear it in your voice and the relationship.
They were fine people. I mean, I was one floor below them. I used to tease Mrs. Bush, and I mean, you know, at the '84 convention, my room was on the second highest floor. They were on the penthouse there up there, and I used to tease her, what was all that noise going on up there with you and Mr. Bush? You know, and she would say, oh, Arthur, now you just stop that right here. Arthur. You know, just very fine people. I just loved them dearly, and you know, they paid a very high price for their bad economics. They lost the election.
Listen, can I use that to ask you another question, Art? Because, you know, we're covering this, you know, the market being down 800 points today and what have you. And in the bond market today, some of the kind of takeaway from some people was that the bond market is telling us that this economy, the modern day, the current day economy, is slowing down. So is there a chance that what happened to President Bush, an economic turn that you described, even though some argue it was coming back when the election happened, whatever the case may be, but if the economy turned on President Bush and cost him the election in '92, is history about to repeat itself with President Trump in 2020?
Well, I have no reason to believe that's the case right now at all.
Okay.
I mean, it's one day. I remember driving from my home in San Diego to Los Angeles in a 3-hour drive. The market was down. I think that was in '87 with Alan Greenspan just coming in. The market was down 500 points on a market of 1,500. It was down 33% in one day. That was a pretty bad day.
Do you read the bond market as signaling a slowdown?
Sure, if this were to last for a long time, it would be signaling a slowdown. But it's just a day. It's a couple of weeks. If you look at all the markets since the election, it's done very nicely, thank you. The policies that are in place are just fine. The tax cut's great. I don't see any changes happening there that would make me pessimistic. Right. I think Powell's doing a great job at the Fed. I think deregulation's fantastic. And when I think of what's really happening with Larry Kudlow, Kevin Hassett, and Steve Mnuchin, you've got the 3 best advisors imaginable giving the president advice. So, what couldn't be better?
Powell's doing a great job at the Fed. You better check your Twitter feed to see if. I'm
just kidding. I love the president dearly, and
thank you, Art.
He tweeted my book out, by the way.
I saw that exactly. So yeah.
How's that for cool?
Thank you. And those are great stories, by the way, about President Bush. Thank you so much. Now, Arthur,
that's
funny. Thank you very much.